Ron, welcome to your first ShareSoc presentation and maybe one of many to come. So over to you, and I'll pick up at the end to handle the Q&A.
Great. Thank you very much, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here this evening, speaking both to new investors and shareholders. I'm hoping that there will be a lot of questions at the end, but I'm also hoping to give you a pretty thorough walkthrough of MGC's current status to clarify some points that we know shareholders and potential investors are interested in understanding, and to just be here to start a dialogue with the English investor and start interacting on a level where we can be here for you to answer these questions, especially through groups like ShareSoc. So without further ado, I will start sharing my screen, and we can start walking through this presentation. Even to start, I think it's important to note that the idea of phytomedicines is an idea that is guiding us currently, and we see as a hallmark of our distinction. Phytomedicine means plant-based medicine. It can include cannabinoids, but as some of you might know, we've also discovered very interesting realms outside of the cannabinoid that have given us some very interesting opportunities this year. So phytomedicines is the larger envelope definition for these plant-based medicines that can have a significant impact on the well-being of our patients and additionally on our ability to stand up to our mission, which I will expand upon as we move forward.
Ron, sorry to interrupt briefly, but on my screen, it's looking like you haven't gone into slideshow.
I'm going into slideshow mode right now. I realized I'm so used to looking at it this way.
Yeah.
These fades are much nicer.
Okay, thank you.
Corporate overview. Thank you, Mike. A brief corporate overview here of MGC Pharma, a European-based biopharma company that was founded 7 years ago, publicly traded on the ASX and the LSE. It's worth noting that we were the first medical cannabis company to list on the LSE recently, and we hope that in doing so, we have opened up a doorway for more companies to start taking advantage of this very interesting investor base. And what we had to go through to get here was not simple, and I think that stands throughout this presentation that I'll give. MGC has undertaken to do some very difficult things. Sometimes it takes a little longer than the market would love, but we're doing it the right way, and we're trying to demonstrate that with clinical results and products that really stand up to all of the tests that can be applied to them. Our core business, as I said, is to develop and supply high-quality phytocannabinoid and plant-based medicines for the growing demand globally. I think Europe, North America, and Australasia is just the beginning of the global demand for these products as their efficacy is proved. Currently, we have a patient base in Australia, the UK, Brazil, and Ireland, which is growing. We have shareholders in both Australia and the UK currently. The UK opened us up to a more institutional investor, higher worth funds, etc., which has been very good for us, and we hope bodes well for the future as well. In our past year, we've really done a lot of things that we think will demonstrate our value long term and increase our value offering for this new UK market that we've recently entered. Our company mission is to build an innovative, vertically integrated biopharma company which provides standardized, affordable phytomedicines at the highest regulatory compliances for targeted global markets and patients. And to summarize that very long sentence, we want to make medicines that make people better, at a lower cost, and that provide them with the ability to experience the benefits of plant-based medicine in the purest of medical contexts. It should come from their doctor, it should come from the pharmacy, and it should be provided through the normal pathways that they're used to. Our financial year growth in the sale of phytocannabinoid products, as you can see, is on a constant upswing. The markets are getting bigger. Our ability to enter the markets are bigger. The more we're engaging with markets, the more we're learning about those consumers, those doctors, and those pathways to access. So we do believe that we've started upon the King's Road. The more regions we bring on, the better of an understanding we have how to deal with them as we enter these markets. And we anticipate in the coming year to enter some more very interesting markets as well. Our board of directors, like everything with MGC, we're trying to build a significant base for what we're planning on doing. And this means looking both back and forward. As a medical cannabis company, we were founded by people who were involved in what is arguably the first medical cannabis industry globally in Israel. And they founded the company with a global vision. To found the company and to move it forward, they brought on board people that had experience in various industries that had to expand rapidly and had to deal with difficult regulation, a lack of understanding of the core offering, et cetera. That would include our current CEO, who has experience in agritech and biopharma that gives him the skills to be able to lead the company. An executive chairman with experience in capital markets who has been able to successfully raise money for us over the past years, giving us the ability to create the clinical pipeline we currently can boast. And looking towards the future, we've brought on people with experience in pharmaceuticals, both in formulation, regulation, dealing with companies and dealing with governments, because that's a large part of our mission in the coming years, to be able to engage on a pharma level with all the elements of the supply and value chain that we're engaging with. Our clinical and operational management, and both of these things are equally as important for MGC. Our clinical pipeline supports our ability to manufacture products and formulate products and bring them to market. And in order to support that, we've brought on a team that we think spans all of the areas that we need covered. Some of our recent announcements would include the acquisition of a CRO, which brought Dr. Nadia Lizovader on board with us as a full clinical, as our chief clinical officer, essentially. She also brings with her an entire CRO, an entire clinical research organization that makes MGC much more nimble and much more dynamic in our ability to approach clinical trials than any company out there. Professor Uri Kramer is really at the foundation of this industry. This is the first man who did research with children with cannabinoids for epilepsy. And his knowledge has been invaluable in the development, of course, of Canopial, as well as the analytical and data collection tools that we're developing to go along with these products, so that our next generation of products is even better and even better targeted to specific indications. Recently, we also brought on board as our global sales officer, Nicole Goodres, ex-Tilray, ex-Johnson & Johnson. Both of those names mean that she has an understanding of the business at volume, and she has an understanding of the pharmaceutical side of the business. Very important for us in order to increase our footprint. And it's been significant even in the past 3 months in streamlining and increasing our operations in Australia, the onboarding of the clinic that we've recently acquired, which I'll get into later. All of these are helped by having a sales officer with a real wealth of experience in the markets that we're entering. And then last but not least, I'll speak of Dr. Jonathan Grunfeld, who is probably one of the doctors to have prescribed the most medical cannabis in the world to date, because he was one of the first in Israel, meaning he started before anyone. The breadth of observational data, the ability to communicate with doctors and be able to assess their issues and understanding our goals and how our products are created is a significant asset for the company. And helps us figure out what our future pipeline is going to look like as well, with a really an inspiring amount of foresight into what the future holds for phytocannabinoid treatments. A few highlights, which I'll really leave as highlights because I'm going to expand on everything as we move forward. We're one of the first companies to hold a GMP manufacturing facility that can manufacture phytocannabinoids, and we're definitely one of the few that have the ability to manufacture IMPDs, investigational medical products. These are the products that go into clinical trials, and they mean that the products can later go to central market authorization, as this is now one of MGC's chief goals. And as we're extremely focused on our clinical pipeline and getting these things over a central market authorization in the not far off future, the ability to manufacture our own products for these trials is significant. We're not dependent on anyone else, and that's where vertical integration comes in very significantly for us. We have products in the pipeline, which I'll expand on further, a rapidly growing patient base, a distribution network that we've built carefully over the past 5 years, finding partners who have experience in pharma and the ability to work at that level, which means that we're building the market for deeper access after central market authorization. And in the interim period, we're able to really pursue a pharma agenda that also takes advantage of cannabis-based medical agendas globally. I've already spoken about our team. I'll move along. This strategy as expressed here, and I just need to adjust my screen a little bit, but the strategy as it refers to the vertical integration. We like to hold as much of the value chain as we can, although we might not always use all of it, because there's other ways to default some of that cost. However, we've gone the distance, as I said, in building a long-term value. Registered genetics in Europe with incredibly high levels of individual phytocannabinoids to lend to our ability to both license and manufacture API, active pharmaceutical ingredient, which is the key building block of all of our products. And the more, let's put it this way, the more we're growing of a higher percentage, the less we have to extract in order to receive the same amount of API, which means that even at this point in the value chain, we're concerned with the affordability and our ability to keep our products incredibly cost effective for patients. We have the ability and the knowledge, and if need be, the facilities to manufacture our own API. But more significantly and more empowered now again by our purchase of the CRO, we have the ability to move directly into clinical trials very rapidly. And this is happening both in Europe, in Australia, and in other regions where we're engaged with the highest levels of regulatory authorities and are being more and more referred to very high level medical institutions that would be interested in engaging clinical agendas. Our product development is obviously important along this line, and our ability to manufacture these IMPDs in Slovenia gives us the ability to centralize our distribution through our distribution partners and make sure that we're building a supply chain that is dependable. Consistency and dependability for the patient at the end of this chain are incredibly important hallmarks of what we do. Let's talk a little bit about our products and the research and development that we're engaged in. I've already gone into this idea of plant-based products and our road towards marketing authorization. Truly the closest parallel that I can draw to this, the best comparator is GW Pharma. Here's a company that did build a phytocannabinoid plant-based agenda, even though they dabbled in synthetics along the way as well, with the idea of achieving central market authorization. Arguably, they put a lot of eggs in one basket. We're trying to diversify a little bit more by having a very robust product offering that has also a staggered timeline, which lets us keep introducing products into the market. We're also taking advantage of something that GW was less able to because of the pathway that they chose. And we're currently able to provide Canopial and other products that are in our clinical pipeline to patients globally via early access schemes and special access schemes. The quality of our production and our team is pharma, and that means that everyone understands the importance of every piece of paperwork and every tracking of every box that we release from our facilities. Again, this means that we're interacting at a very high level, both with the regulatory bodies and the medical authorities that we deal with. And a large part of what we need to do here at the bottom, you see clinical trials and educational symposiums. A little bit on education. Doctors are a crucial part of this chain. MGC is not a company that gets to interact with doctors directly for various reasons, but through all of our distributor relationships, we are constantly encouraging the education of doctors, the dissemination of knowledge, working with patient groups in order to increase demand. All of these efforts mean that, you know, the agenda can grow in every region, and we can have educated doctors who eventually are going to reach for our products because they're standard set. The moment you accept the idea of cannabis and phytocannabinoids as a treatment, we're positioning ourselves to be the top shelf on various levels, especially with an eye towards eventually being approved by health systems in countries as a central market authorized product. So, key products that we have on trial right now, and this is when I'll start getting into some of our pipeline, which I'm sure is very interesting to a lot of you. Our areas of engagement generally, MGC, were built around 3 areas of engagement: neurology, oncology, and autoimmune. Currently, we have 2 neurology products in our pipeline. That's Canopial and Cognican. Canopial is starting its phase 2b clinical trial at Schneider Children's Hospital in Israel. This is, as the hospital would imply, this is a trial on children with refractory epilepsy, children and adolescents. We're very excited for the results of this trial because this leads us to a phase 3, which leads us to market authorization. And we're very confident in Canopial because we've had the chance to actually see it on the market, and it works. Cognican, which is our dementia, Alzheimer's and dementia product, is currently beginning a phase 2 at University of Notre Dame in Western Australia in Perth. Again, a product that, you know, for the UK could be very, very compelling given that the NHS has earmarked one of its problems is not having enough beds for elderly patients in the coming years. Cognican is potentially a tool to lower the effects of the stress of dementia, which means that you might need less beds. It means that the patients might be less stressed and therefore demand less attention and constant care. There are a lot of public health ramifications that come out of some of our treatments that we're also very, very eager to explore more as we move forward. So those are the 2 neurological products currently. And of course, we have our autoimmune product, which can be defined as an anti-inflammatory and antibacterial, but most significantly is currently defined as a COVID treatment with the ability to stop the cytokine storm. Now, Symmetra is, interestingly enough for us, and this is why this whole plant-based agenda has really taken hold, it does not contain cannabinoids. It's designed from 4 natural ingredients that interact together with a specific formulatory process that makes them more bioavailable and work better. And it basically halts the cytokine storm. We've seen this in the phase 2b trial that we did in the previous incarnation of this product, which was Artemic, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But results from this trial successfully showed this, and now we're entering a phase 3 with this trial, and we expect to be able to achieve market authorization possibly within 2021, which is a fast-track timeline for Corona, of course, but very significant achievement for us as well. If you'll give me a second, I'm going to take a sip of water. Okay, Canopial. This is the product that we've been talking about for quite a while. It's a significant product in our pipeline. It has an incredibly significant market. It's already available to patients in Australia and the UK as an IMP through early access schemes. We expect to be bringing some Canopial to the UK to patients in need shortly. The average cost for treatment when we examine this, you know, in Australia is 10 to 14,000 Australian for a year. And that's approximately, I believe, 50% to 60% cheaper than anything else that was out on the market currently with the same efficacy. We're very hopeful that this is a product that will be first on, a national registry, an NHS or through some sort of public body. The recent announcement about Epidiolex doing that in Australia only gives us hope. And then within that context, it's worth mentioning that Epidiolex is for two types of epilepsy, Dravet's and Rett syndrome. Canopial is designed for refractory epilepsy. So our market is much bigger. The numbers in this presentation are in Australian dollars, but the global epilepsy market is expected to be 12.9 billion by 2023. There's no reason to think that MGC can't take a significant share of that market in the coming years as we bring an affordable, effective, and clinically backed product to more and more markets. So Canopial is really, in many ways, especially within the phytocannabinoid mission, Canopial is, our flagship product at the moment. Cognican is also, as I mentioned, an incredibly compelling product. Dementia and Alzheimer's are horrible to contend with. And part of the reason that these illnesses are so bad, that anything that involves dementia is so bad, is because of the recurring stress that patients experience. And again, the global health ramifications, the amount of energy that goes into a patient that needs to be constantly reintroduced to their condition is monumental sometimes. And anyone who's worked in an old age facility would testify to that. Our preclinical results with Cognican and observational data that was collected really indicates that this is a way for patients to be able to relax while still dealing with what is going on around them, and significantly can lower their levels of stress. It sounds like a small part of it, but it's a very major part of the side effects and the effects of dementia. And we believe that we're going to see that in this phase 2 trial. Also because, and this is again harkens back to our now experience with a CRO and our ability to craft trials, because we can craft the endpoints and begin to ask the correct questions, which is a learning curve in and of itself for any pharma company with a clinical pipeline. So I promised I would explain this earlier. If you've been following some of our announcements, you've seen that some of the announcements revolve around Artemic, some of the announcements revolve around Symmetra. These are one primary formulation that has basically been able to diverge into two product lines. Arguably, as we move forward in the future, this is going to create two separate revenue streams. Already, we're seeing one of them. And it gives us the ability as a company to actively engage in both the food supplement, the nutritional supplement market, and the pharmaceutical markets. And I'll explain a little bit more. We essentially at MGC at the beginning of this year took a food supplement, a nutritional supplement, through a phase 2b trial. It was successful. And then we determined that the best path was to create an actual pharmaceutical with a full CMC, a chemical manufacturing profile that can be taken to central market authorization after a successful phase 3. And at the same time, bring a product to market that can take advantage of the phase 2b trial that we did and the emerging knowledge that we have about this product. Because again, to be honest, this is a product that people need around the world right now, be it India, be it anywhere. So Artemic is now a family of products. Artemic Rescue, which is an immediate intervention post-positive PCR test. Artemic Support, which can be taken in order to strengthen the immune system and lessen the opportunity for infection of various kinds. And we're, as per recent announcements, we're already seeing revenue generated by Artemic, which we manufacture. And Symmetra, which is starting its phase 3 trials now, we believe has significant potential for the future, and not only in the realm of COVID, but with various other indications that also have this cytokine storm as their kind of crucial moment, their tipping point. So again, Symmetra, this is when keeping with our mission of a biopharma, Symmetra is now our focus. Symmetra is going to be the product that, you know, we get market authorized, that we can begin to do other clinical trials with on other indications, and that we're going to be able to provide to hospital groups, to countries as an immediate intervention post positive PCR test in order to, and the value offering here is pretty simple when we talk to governments and when we're speaking with these bodies. A patient that goes through an ER process with corona costs 34,000 euro. A bottle of Symmetra will cost between 70 and 100 euro. Where's a better place for a government or a hospital group to spend its money? And then again, we also come to the question of global public health. The solutions that compare to Symmetra essentially on the market now require nurses' assistants, IV injections, and what we've developed here is a spray, which someone can take home and administer themselves. So the burden of tasked health systems is potentially greatly lightened by introducing a product like Symmetra into the pipeline of corona intervention. Talking a little bit about preclinical, because again, as a biopharma, the agenda that we're building for the next 10 years involves having products coming to market consistently. And those products need to be better and better in their efficacy, better and better in their cost ratio for the company, and better and better in the clinical support and clinical data that we've managed to collect for them. And this is for the benefit of the entire industry, not just for the benefit of us as a company. The more research is going on, the better these products are going to get and the more effective they're going to get. The more research we're doing into more and more phytocannabinoids, the better the industry is going to be and the better its end products will be. So to go into some of our preclinical products, we have Sepican, which is an oral spray to treat cerebral palsy. Obviously, delivery methods are very significant. I'll get into that a little bit later, but even something like cerebral palsy, where there's often uncontrollable movement, an oral spray can be a very interesting intervention method. And these are the things that we like to think about also, not only a good product, but a good product in the correct way of being delivered. In oncological and cancer side effects, we have Tetranol, which we've done some very interesting preclinical work, which is a treatment of anorexic cachexia, side effect of also many oncological treatments. We have our very interesting research with the National Institute of Biology in Slovenia into glioblastoma. Glioblastoma is one of the most fatal cancers, brain cancers out there. If it goes away once, it usually comes back again. We've had an opportunity to engage in very high-level research, whereas we're actually receiving excised glioblastomas. So we're engaging with the active cancer cells, and the results have been very, very promising to the point that this is one of the first products that we see moving up in the clinical pipeline in 2021, and we're very excited about that process. And then we have our two projects with RMIT and Canahub in Australia, which is preclinical on the treatment of melanoma cancer with phytocannabinoids and the treatment of prostate cancer. Both very interesting and obviously very, very wide avenues, which in the preclinical process, we start to narrow down. Within autoimmune, we have our bioactive capsule to treat Crohn's and IBS INCAN, which we're also involved in thinking and developing a delivery method that makes such a product more effective. The gut biome is a whole interesting planet that needs to be dealt with in a very specific way. And the endocannabinoid system might have very interesting keys to this. And additionally, we have Topican, which even emerged from our pipeline at MGC Derma. And that's why we believe that along the way, everything that we've done has been a way to learn. And Topican is a very, very effective treatment of eczema and inflamed skin, which also happen to be side effects of many pharmaceuticals out there. So obviously there's a lot of people that suffer from this. And we've had very successful study results where we're interested in putting this into a clinical pipeline as well over the coming year. I mentioned drug delivery technology, so I'll digress a little bit here into one of our developments with a partner company with Graph Polymer, is our focus on SNEDS technology, which is nanostructured materials that deliver medicines better, that are able to specifically distribute the API, that are able to control the release, and that give us this high bioavailability, which means we need less API, less active pharmaceutical ingredients to manufacture our products and to make them effective, which again are savings and affordability that we can pass on to our patients along the way, and hopefully also increase the footprint of our medications with that. I mentioned RMIT, and I'll go in a little bit into MGC's collaborative agenda with academia. I also mentioned our glioblastoma study, which is the result of the same agenda. 4 years ago or 5 years ago, we were already engaged with RMIT in Australia to build a facility that could facilitate cannabinoid research, to encourage doctoral students and other students to engage in cannabinoid research through something that we developed called the CanaHub, which was designed to be an accelerator and an incubator for these kind of ideas and this kind of research, it's also in cooperation with Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Obviously, as a company, we have a lot of connections in Israel, be they familial or professional, and Hebrew University of Jerusalem is one of the leaders in cannabinoid research. We thought it was a valuable pipeline to develop, and that's proven to be true, and that in the last 3 months, we've been notified that we received a EU Ready grant, which basically funds 3 doctoral students for 3 years between Hebrew University and RMIT doing research that is under the auspices of this CanaHub, and that MGC has an exclusive right to commercialize at the end of that pipeline. And this is something that we're planning on taking advantage of in order to facilitate our research agendas, as I've iterated a bit earlier, be it delivery methods, be it researching other phytocannabinoids and finding their efficacy, be it collecting all the data that's on the web as we have through our International Library of Cannabinoids, and trying to build a resource that can make it easier for people to do research. Again, I can't emphasize enough how important it is now that this industry, this emerging nascent cannabis industry, be doing as much research as possible to prove efficacy, to bring more products to market, to be able to provide a wider base for the integration of these products into existing medical pipelines. Again, I've spoken a little bit about education, but we have to look to a future where these products and the endocannabinoid system are taught in medical schools. That's going to be the real end game for getting these products into patients' hands from day one, not after a doctor has had to undergo some sort of conversion process. So the more we're interacting with academia, the more we're creating a wide base and accessibility for researchers and young researchers, especially, to start exploring all of the different elements here, be they pharmacological, agricultural, they're endless, then we want to encourage that. Manufacturing and distribution. Currently, MGC, as I've mentioned a few times already, we have the ability to manufacture in Slovenia, fully compliant Schedule II GMP facility with the ability to manufacture IMPDs. I don't like to brag, but most companies get their GMP license for a year. We were given a 3-year license because we went through every step with the Yazam, the organization that supervises this in Slovenia. We walked through it with them. We went back and forth. We did everything they asked us to do. And when they renewed our license this year, they gave us a 3-year license, which we do take as a validation of sorts, because it means they're no longer as suspicious as maybe they were in the past. Additionally, in Malta, our manufacturing facility for Symmetra, which nicely enough, we got the government of Malta and the EU to help us pay for. So it's a 3.8 million euro facility that we got covered for 3.2 million. It's going to go online in October. And with those two facilities, we have the ability to manufacture 200,000 units a month of GMP product within the EU. It's not a small achievement. It's going to grow as the demand grows also. But again, I'd like to point out that we've built this facility in basically a year in keeping with very strict timelines for the grant. And we've done that while we've put this clinical trial into play and while we've expanded our footprint. We feel there are a lot of achievements this year that point to a very bright tomorrow in every regard, and manufacturing is only one of them. Distribution. We believe that it's very important to have the right partners. So sometimes you have to go through a few, but what we've ended up with at this point in time is, first of all, a hub in Slovenia with Lenis, who's a very high-end pharmaceutical distributor, works with Gilead Sciences and other major biopharma companies. And Lenis is basically our distributor from Slovenia to the world, which gives us a very, very responsible and also dependable face. And throughout our relationships globally, we're constantly attempting to maintain the highest levels of support for the pipeline, logistics, pharmacovigilance, and adverse reactions. We treat our products as they deserve to be treated, as pharma products. Each one that reaches a patient with a responsibility that goes all the way back to us in Slovenia. And we want to make sure that our distribution pipeline can support that. As we increase our footprint globally, we're making the same effort in each of the regions that we're looking at, be it Southeast Asia, be it Latin America and the Caribbean. We want to make sure that we're choosing the right players instead of just going to the first person that knocks on our door. Patients. I didn't spend enough time in this presentation talking about them because they are our reason for existence. They are the reason that we're going to be able to keep working, and they deserve a lot of our attention. So MGC has always thought about the patients. We're always trying to find ways to access them, understand them, provide products that match up to their needs, understand what those needs are. As a test case, we can look at our relationship with Epilepsy Action in Australia, which was a very deep relationship. We worked together on several projects that advanced the idea of medical cannabis as a treatment for epilepsy, not specifically the agenda of MGC, but again, if we prepare the soil correctly, then the plants will grow. If the market in Australia is ready to accept these products, they're going to accept ours and prescribe ours because they're the best. That's something that we have to know behind the scenes of doing these things. Again, I spoke about doctors. It's very important to have relationships with doctors and to educate them as much as possible. So we try to reach out through any educational modules that our distributors have. We try to give doctors in each of the regions that we go out to the opportunity to interact with our experts and to get the benefit of their experience and knowledge. Obviously, every region we enter, it's something new for them. And even though it's not new for us, sometimes you have to explain everything from A to Z and then do it twice again in order to really clarify. And we're willing to do that. And we have people that have the patience and the ability to do that because they believe in the mission at the end of the day. And then one of the other angles that MGC has recently taken and we think is going to be valuable for us is in Australia, we can access the patient directly. So we bought a clinic. And that clinic is set up to give us better access and understanding of the patients that we're already serving, the ability to onboard more patients more effectively, and also an ability to spend less and be able to pass those savings through and control the price of our products more responsibly in the Australian market, where we discover there's not always the most responsible players when it comes to facing the patient. And we want to make sure that the patient is getting the full benefit of our mission, which is, again, to provide these affordable phytocannabinoids treatments consistently and at the highest level that we can. So this again is just reiterating that point. I'm not going to belabor it too much, but I think this is going to be a very interesting test model for us in Australia in accessing the patient directly, being able to communicate with them, understand their needs, and get a more direct pipeline to what they might want from us in the future. Our investment proposition as a company, we do have decades of experience. We've become very focused in the past 2 or 3 years on our mission, which is to be this biopharma, this plant-based biopharma company. Our strategic location is significant because we're in a hub in the EU and we'll continue to do so in Malta. Additionally, we've built relationships that give us potential hubs internationally should we need. Our product offering is not only robust, it's very different than the other products out on the market. At the end of the day, if you think about the global medical cannabis market right now, it might be touching the 5 billion, 10 billion. It doesn't really matter. There's various estimations. The global pharmaceutical market is 1.6 trillion. There's no question about that. MGC wants to be taking a sliver of that global market easily, that huge pharmaceutical market, instead of fighting over real estate in a very small medical cannabis market that might continue to remain small for a while. That's why we really see our agenda of products through clinical support and trials to central market authorization as being our launching pad between those two worlds, and definitely into starting to take a much more significant part of that pharma market in various indications and in various geographies. I'm not going to read you guys the whole disclaimer, you know it by heart, I'm sure. Thank you very much. That's me wrapping it up, and all questions are going to be answered by Roby, hopefully. But I'm also available, and I will be here.
Thanks very much for taking us through that, Ron. And hopefully we've got Roby on the line from Macedonia. Are you there, Roby?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. So that's good. It's I think it's the first multinational webinar I can remember hosting. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed this works. Just taking these questions in order, the way they've been voted for. The first one is really just, could you tell us a bit more about who you believe your major competitors are at the moment in those markets you're operating in? And what do you think your major competitive advantages are?
So first of all, in a short to understand, when we're speaking about competitors, the market is built from 3 different segments. The recreational, which there are a lot of competitors, but we are not playing in this sector. The lifestyle wellness, which MGC took a small part at the beginning of the road with cosmetics and supplement, and sold it to kind of global, where now we are not also competing in this sector. And then we are going to the pharmaceutical side, where the competitors are GW, that most of you are familiar with it, and has been acquired by Jazz Pharmaceuticals. The other companies that are in this sector are less than handful companies. Most of the companies are going on the first 2 sectors, whereas it's easier to access, you need to have less investment, and it's for a shorter period. But in the pharmaceutical side, our competitor, just for example, if we're talking about Symmetra, our competitor is Pfizer. And I can count several dot points where we are better than their product. But we become the competitor in the pharma industry and not just in the cannabis industry. But in the cannabis, we are very unique. And in the whole plant to medicine base, we are extremely unique. And therefore, I don't see much of a competitors. We also have a unique product that are not directly compete with everybody. We're choosing very carefully the formulation through the experience of our doctors. And therefore, I would not say that we see high risk at this stage.
Okay, thank you. Cut to the chase on this one. When do you see yourselves making real money for shareholders?
Well, I assume that, first of all, the share price will go up, which real money to shareholders. But assuming that everybody are talking about dividends, which is something that is our primary goal to be in a cash flow positive by the end of this year, if not earlier, and follow that already to be a dividend generating company. So our work with our formulation and the clinical studies once we're getting a marketing authorization and the big market is open to the company, then we're talking about companies that become a blue chip company, companies that generating dividends, that are selling globally over hundreds of millions of dollars.
Okay, so critical to that would be the marketing authorization later this year, if it happens for Symmetra, would it, to generate the first positive cash flows?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Next one up here, any insight on how the phase 3 clinical trials for Symmetra are actually going? Can you tell us any more?
I can tell you from my own experience as recovered from COVID through Symmetra, it's worked. We can see the phase 2 studies, it's work. We see the preclinical, it's work. What will happen in the phase 3, nobody know yet.
Okay. You had a lot of positive news flow on RNSs in the last couple of months, but it doesn't seem to have affected the share price very much. Are you thinking about buying back shares anytime in the near future?
Consolidation or buying back shares is also always an option on the table. I think that at the moment, the market is really hoping for some results and news that will come. And as such, at this moment, mostly we are deferred by the market segment. We can see that the global cannabis segment is going down in Canada, North America, Australia, and also the companies in the UK. So we are also part of this element when we're looking on the market. But I'm sure that once we will get the results and more news that are more critical to the company progress, we will see more movement in our share price upward.
Okay, so the obvious trigger point for that would be, I presume, the marketing authorization for Symmetra once you can announce positive news on that. Is there anything else in the next sort of near term that we should be looking out for as investors in terms of news that is important in the development stages you're going through?
Also Canopial, which is our refractory epilepsy treatment that entering to phase 2B. The results of this study will affect a lot on our existing sales as an IMP around the world, in Australia, in UK, Brazil, and adding more territories and getting more confidence by the doctors. So the sales will be affected by the result of the phase 2B. So we will see already some effect before we are getting the marketing authorization. The second part is also our development in our preclinical studies. We are dealing with brain cancer, glioblastoma, which is a very rare and aggressive case of cancer. And once we'll get into the clinical study, moving from the preclinical into the clinical, it will be a unique approach, and hopefully we'll see a fast result that also will influence on the company status.
Okay, thank you. Why is the USA not included as a target market at the moment?
At the moment, when we are looking on the cannabis sector, as I said at the beginning, there is a recreational sector. And until we're not having a near-term marketing authorization, we exclude the American market. Also from the strategy of the company, at the moment, we are looking on the Europe, Australia, Asia, where it's more close to our operating side. And in a later stage, we also will look on the American market once we are closer to the marketing authorization stage.
Okay, thank you. You've mentioned before that 5,000 prescriptions is an important milestone for you as you strive to break even position. How close to this number of prescriptions are you presently?
We are getting closer. I would say that I hope to get it a little bit earlier, but we are on the right track. We can see the results in the presentations that Ron just did. And as I say, I hope that middle of this year, end of this year, we will be there.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of your current financial position, do you think you'll need to access any further financing or fundraising over the next 12 months?
We will need to see the result of our clinical studies and growth of sales. I assume that unless we will see an investment opportunity that will benefit the company, not just as an operating side, then we will consider raising. Otherwise, we're going to see that our revenues and profit coming from the sales that we just indicated in the last 2 weeks on Symmetra, for example, Artemic, Canopial, other products that are being sold in Australia, these sales are increasing and the profit come with them. So I hope that we will be able to show that we don't need the money for the operating, and we'll have the right reason if we need so.
Okay, thank you. Are you currently in the process of any new deals or contracts like the Swiss Pharma AG, such as with governments in countries with a high COVID-19 infection rate, for example, like India?
We always in communication with distributors, with drug agencies, and with government on all of our product, but we'll need to wait and see what comes.
Okay, yep. Where does Extra X fit into the business model?
I assume that everybody's speaking about it through a small marketing exercise that we did a couple of weeks ago. We're now working on building the relation and the platform, and I assume in the next couple of months we will see this product launch. Okay.
And how might Symmetra be differentiated from dexamethasone, which also limits cytokine storms in COVID-19 patients?
First of all, on the delivery system, we're talking about oral administration, while the other product, such as this reference, are using IV or injection. And as such, first of all, we are much more easy on delivery and much more patient-friendly, I would say, or nurse-friendly. So this is the first element. And then it's refer also for the cost-effective and the affordable of the product to the patient. The competitor product are around the thousands of dollars per treatment, while we are talking about below the $100 per treatment. And as such, we are much more affordable and accessible for patients around the world. I will not go into compare between which product is better, but I can say that from the side effect of the product, we don't have adverse event. We don't have side effect. It's well-known active substances, while the other chemical substances, unfortunately, bringing a lot of adverse events together with them.
Okay, thank you. Curcumin and artemisinin, I hope I said that right, and boswellia are all already available separately as nutritionals. So given that, how do you get commercial protection for Artemic and Symmetra? And how do you prevent or compete with copy versions if they become available?
So first of all, there is a big difference between buying a curcumin in the supermarket to buy curcuminoids, which are the active ingredient of the curcumin as a API, active pharmaceutical ingredient. The second part is that from the very beginning, the active substances are sitting in a nanosphere molecules that are being patented by Mivital, the sister company of Swiss Pharma, where we are working with them, and also by ourselves in Symmetra. So there are patent protection around the product, around the formulation. The second part is that we have a compounded formulation. It's not just that you take just artemisinin or just curcuma, it will work. You need to have a certain ratio between the active ingredient that we explore through a matrix that we tested various combination to get the right results and been proven by the clinical studies.
Okay, thank you. Subsidiary question to that. Do you need a taste masked product?
I beg your pardon?
I assume, I don't know. I thought you may know what I meant. Do you need a taste masked product? So presumably, do you have to mask the taste of your product in some way?
For the North Europeans that have lack of spices in the food, I'm sure that it will be a slight surprise. But for the more Mediterranean, spices are quite good.
Probably not. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Why did you opt to list on the main LSE market in London rather than the AIM market, the junior market in London, which offers investors like ourselves more tax benefits and advantages in many cases in terms of stamp duty, inheritance tax, and so on? Was there any particular reason why you went straight for the main market?
I had this conversation, so I can answer very easily. First of all, we looked on the bigger, better, and the first to market. So for us, this was more important, that we will be exposed to a bigger market, and the LSE is in the top 10, and I think the biggest in Europe. So we'll have higher exposure to our company. The second part is I would like to see MGC as a company that it's good to invest regardless to the tax benefit. I mean, the tax benefits are good, but you should invest in MGC because it's even make it better, not because it's help on the tax. If the scheme, or if we were more early stage companies that we were starting, I might consider the aim, but because we already mature company and we should be exposed into the higher numbers, we prefer to go on the LSE.
Okay, thank you. The price you paid for Medica NL seems a bit expensive, 24 times earnings, apparently, given that other recent CRO acquisitions have been at much lower earnings multiples, for example, Ergomed's recent acquisition. Could you not have acquired Medica NL at a more reasonable price in line with other industry deals?
So a small remark, the earnings were $1 million and the buy price was 6 million Australian dollars only in shares. So 24 is not the case. Maybe on the profitability, which also not quite the case. So when we compare the 1 million to 6 million that we bought, and it's become much more attractive, and that it goes with equity and not with direct money. Two elements on this is that, first of all, the cost of saving to the company over the existing clinical studies that we are running, it's already become much more affordable to pay this 6 million to acquire this company and to have all the team in-house rather than to pay it outside. It's meaning that we save more on the clinical study costs. So if we didn't have Medica NL in-house, we had to spend more money in the next 3 years on clinical studies.
All right, thanks, Roby. Just on a subsidiary point there, now that you've brought Medican in-house, what's the implication for their third-party client list and how that might impact on their earnings going forward? Because you've got this problem of presumably managing the priorities now for them.
So when we approach this process of acquisition of Medica NL, there was absolutely full transparency from Medica NL to their clients that they're going to be acquired. And on the other side, we put a certain iron curtain between MGC to the other clients, so they will be able to continue to receive an independent CRO. And so far, we didn't saw any quitters from Medica NL due to the fact that they are providing a very good service, have a lot of experience running over 80 different clinical studies in cannabis in Israel and outside of Israel, have years of experience, and it's better to continue with them than without them, apparently.
Okay, thank you. Now we've got a handful of other questions here, but I'm conscious that we're 2 or 3 minutes past the deadline. Are you happy to stay with us for a couple more minutes and answer these online, or would you like to take them and perhaps come back to us with answers?
No, happily to answer.
Okay, thank you. Another one, going back to funds again, really, the current, what's your current cash burn rate? And then obviously there was a subsidiary question that would you answered earlier about raising funds from the market in the near future, but could you give us an idea what your cash burn rate is likely to be for the next year or two?
It's quite difficult to say what will be the burn rate in the next 2 years. I can say what was the burn rate in the previous months. We are not going to see much increasing in the existing burn rate, but we're going to see more revenues and profit on the other side. So what you saw in the previous quarter and the quarter before it, it's give you quite of a straight line of our burn rate. And on the other side, you see that our increase in revenues and profitability will go side by side. As Ron explained in our clinical and preclinical programs, the idea is to have every 2 years, 2 new products. It means that we will not overload clinical studies and research costs during these 2 years. So we will all the time maintain the same burn rate. We will not spike more burn rate in the near term.
Okay, thank you. How does the MGC Pharma plants, production plants, differ from the Chinese pharmaceutical production plants that are using the same kind of approaches for traditional herbs and plants in the Chinese market at the moment for clinical use?
I would say the first two letters in the manufacturing side, it's EU. European GMP, it's basically gives a certificate of the quality. There are also, you're buying cheap, usually will get cheap. It's not that all the facilities are cheap, but usually when you want to have quality, you will go to buy an EU GMP pharmaceutical product that represent the inspections, the quality part, and all the restrictions that we have in our facility to assure that what we bring today to the patient will get it also in 1 month in next year. And if, God forbid, there is a problem, we will know what's the source of the problem and we'll be able to track it down. So this is the main difference between us to other GMPs around the world, and as a general aspect of EU GMP to non-EU GMP. Beside that, I don't know to which facility to compare, so I will just say that we are trying to be the best in what we are doing.
Okay, thank you. Is your preclinical discovery work based on blind phenotypic screening, or is this conducted with defined molecular targets in mind?
So it's kind of a combination. As Ron present, we have an experienced team coming from the medical cannabis in Israel and the pharmaceutical, such as Johnny Grunfeld and Professor Ulrich Kramer, that they had a lot of experience with different product, different formulation, different genetics of cannabis on variety of patient and different indication. So when we are going and looking forward for an indication, we know quite good which indications that we want to research, because we have already the experience and the data of what's working on this indication. And then we need to do small metrics that are taking several compounds and running them over the mechanism of action. And then we're getting more accurate to the result. And then we're developing the formula and go on. So it's quite a combination. It's not a blind stab in the dark to try to give something and to see if it's worked. We have a lot of knowledge that capitalize into this ability to get the formula right good from the beginning.
Okay, thank you. I had a follow-up here on that question about the 24 times earnings versus your estimate of 6 times earning with the recent acquisition. So I think there's a kind of a difference of opinion about what were the earnings for that particular organization, but we're not going to solve that here and now. Are you happy for us to pass that through to you on email, and you can perhaps come back to the questioner in due course about the relative price versus earnings on that one?
Definitely.
Yeah.
But one of the important things, it's not just about the earning or how you calculate it, it's about the knowledge that coming with this money. So we get an experience. We are a cannabis field. We're looking for CRO in the cannabis sector. So there are many CROs that are coming from different fields, but to identify good teams that know how to design a clinical protocol and to build the right protocol to get into the marketing authorization, worth more than the monies that we paid. Because if you build the wrong protocol for the clinical studies, and in the end of the day, even that the product was good, the ability to achieve the right biostatistics and the right result in the end of the study might cost you of returning and doing again the study. And just this small incident already back pay all the cost of such CRO. So when we looked on different CROs in the market, we looked on the experience and the knowledge, not just in the pharmaceutical side, but also in the cannabis and the phytomedicine side.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that, Roby. Well, I think we'll call it quits. It's 9 minutes past, so thank you for staying a little longer and answering all the questions. We've got quite a few, so quite a high level of interest there in what you are doing. And I have to say it's a first for me, cannabinoids. I've not come across any before, so I appreciate the presentation you've given us. I've learned a fair bit about the whole topic today. Thanks for tuning in all the way from Macedonia as well. I wish you well with your business visit over there, and I hope you get back okay. And maybe we'll catch up with you later in the year when there's more news and developments from your clinical trial work. So thank you very much, both to Roby and to Ron, for being with us today.
Thank you very much.